Hey guys, Music Man here, back with another Identity 5 video, and in this video I'm going to be doing my guide on all of the Moonlit Hunter spawns and what you should do as Hunter when you get each spawn. So let's take a look. Okay, so I should probably start by defining my areas. So this area right here, this area is just called God Kite, and why we call it that is they've got like those walls and stuff. It's just really good for breaking line of sight for the hunter. So if you're a survivor, that's a pretty decent place for you to be. This right here is called either Carnival House or two-story. Two-story is pretty self-explanatory, but it's also the Carnival House there. This spot right here is Working Carousel, and we call it Working Carousel because that's the one that spins around. And then we've got the tent over here, and that's pretty self-explanatory. We have the bridge, and then we've got a broken carousel over here, so this is the one that's not spinning as opposed to the one that is. And then we've got first stop, second stop, third stop, and fourth stop respectively, and that's just where the coaster goes and where they stop at the time. So those are my areas defined that I'm going to be referencing throughout the entirety of this video. We can see the first spawn we're going to look at is spawn group 1, which is in God Kite. And for this area, what I recommend doing is the hunter right here. I recommend the hunter goes and chases that survivor that way. So, and if that survivor ends up not being a survivor worth chasing, then you can just walk straight over to bridge. I don't see there being any point in going after, the only feasible one to go after would be right here, but he would have direct access to two-story, which is an area where survivors can really waste a lot of time, and if they time it right, then they'll be able to go into God Kite and then wreak all sorts of havoc there. So you really want to avoid that because the survivor that spawns right there does have a lot of potential there. And in my opinion, this side of the map, generally speaking, has a lot, like this corner here is really strong. This corner's got some quite good places, but in my opinion, like this side of the map, this entire side has a lot less for the survivors to work around, so you, generally speaking, want to pick those spawns first. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at spawn group 2. We can see spawn group 2 is right on Broken Carousel. And what I recommend this hunter does in this scenario is a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go over here to 10, even though that is a risky move because all the survivors are, you can see right here, right here, right here. They're far away if that survivor isn't the survivor you're looking for. But I typically do that if it's a Wu Chang, since if I'm playing Wu Chang, because there's a lot less for that survivor to work around, and in my opinion it's worth the risk. And I carry teleport anyway, so if it's not a survivor worth going after, then I'd be able to teleport to preferably probably this cipher right here, or this cipher if that's where that survivor decides to go. If not, the survivor's either going to go right there or right there, depending on what they decide with their teammates. But you can look around for whatever cipher's wiggling in a crappy area, and that's pretty much what you can do to teleport there. But on Moonlit, teleport is kind of more common than the other traits just because the map's so ginormous, so that's why I kind of run teleport almost every time with Wu Chang. Okay, I think that pretty much covers spawn group 2. So now let's take a look at spawn group 3. And spawn group 3 is hunter spawns in two-story. So this is kind of a rougher spawn for hunters because you kind of blind to where survivors are at, so it's tougher to get the accurate teleport with the Wu Chang there. So you spawn right here. What I recommend doing is, or at least what I've always done, is I walk out through the back of the 2-story, and then I start making way. A lot of times the cipher right here will spawn, and this survivor will go in that direction. So what I do is I tend to walk out the back, then make my way over there, and typically I'll find this survivor or this survivor there. Will be either there, or that survivor might go to the cipher at first stop, in which case you'll probably have to take a hit on the survivor and then chase them down all the way at second stop after the coaster goes through. So I mean, the other path, I mean, I don't ever take this path, but another suggestion would be to go out the front to this survivor right here. You could chase that survivor, although working carousel can be a pain for certain hunters like geishas, and working carousel can be a pain, especially if it's a seer. But if this survivor isn't a survivor you're looking for, you can go ahead and come over to this survivor who's likely either decoding right here or tent. So tent or the backside of tent. Small chance that they might be going to bridge, but if that cipher doesn't spawn, there's a good chance that this survivor will be the one decoding bridge. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers spawn group 3. So now let's take a look at spawn group number 4. So we can see spawn group 4 is hunter spawns first stop there. So what I've always done in this area is I'll go straight over to the bridge cipher. And a lot of these spawn points that I'm pointing out, they're going to go generally to the same area just because really it's this area of the map that's tougher for survivors to kite, and you're likely to get the earlier down. So that's why pretty much every recommendation I have has you either going to bridge or to tent. And when I'm going the match, I don't even really think about the individual spawn points. I just think of where I know survivors are going to be going that has the lowest kiting potential possible. So you go either to bridge there, or and then if that survivor is not one you're looking for, you'll go over to this survivor, which will probably either be decoding working carousel cipher or third stop cipher if that decides to spawn in. That survivor is typically going to be right there. And then obviously you can see I'm pointing out, stay away from 2-story, stay away from God Kite, and that should be enough for you to navigate spawn group 4. Now, a lot of these spawns, what'll happen is if like these rescuers, you run, say you run into like the Merc, and then you run into the forward 2 survivors that you really don't want to chase, then, you know, of course, if there's like a Mind's Eye or something, which is actually kind of relatively more common in Moonlit, then unfortunately you are going to have to chase in some of those bad areas if you decide to not pick up one of those 2 kites. When it comes to either chasing a Merc or a forward, I'd take the forward every time, but it's still tough survivor to chase as a hunter. So I think that pretty much covers spawn group 4. So now we're going to move on to spawn group 5 right here. Hold up, let me get my annotation tools. And spawn group 5 and spawn group 6, I mean, it's really the same plan here, because the hunter spawns in nearly the same area in spawn group 5 and spawn group 6, and your targeted survivors spawn in nearly the same way as well. But we can see there's a survivor that spawns second stop, survivor that spawns God Kite, one that spawns bridge, and the ones that spawns the tent area. So if you're a Wu Chang, you can teleport to this cipher or this cipher. But generally speaking, for most hunters, I'm going to want to pick this bridge cipher again. But the reason why teleporting to those two works with Wu Chang is that if you decide to go to bridge right away, a lot of times they'll be able to see you coming. And a lot of times you'll be able to get that first hit because you're able to jump scare the survivor at those ciphers. But that survivor is either going to go there or there. Most likely this one right here if it decides to spawn. But there's also a decent chance that it'll decide to decode tent. Again, stay away from this survivor right here, and obviously the farthest one away at God Kite. Those are chases not worth taking. I think that covers spawn group 5, so now we'll move on to 6. There's 7 spawn points total in Moonlit. But as you can see, generally speaking, the same type of thing. I mean, instead of this survivor spawning God Kite, he just spawns 2-story. This survivor, instead of second stop, spawns over here. But generally speaking, these two are in the same area, so same thing applies. You can either go to bridge cipher or you can go to... The only thing different about spawn group 6 is this survivor is more likely to go to tent than this cipher that's over here, but generally speaking, you'll be safe either going to one of those two ciphers and going to bridge if none of that works out. So if you're any character other than Wu Chang, I recommend bridge. Spawn group 5, go to this cipher right here. Spawn group 6, go to tent. But even if you flip-flop those two around, I mean, it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to get you in the immediate vicinity of a survivor and a crummy area, which is ultimately what you want. Stay away from these survivors over here. Those are chases not worth taking. So now we're going to go to the final spawn point, which is spawn group 7. So we can see that this is spawning tent. Hunter's right here. Obviously, go right to bridge. I mean, I've said this almost every spawn so far. You go to bridge. I mean, that does put you quite a distance away from other survivors if this survivor isn't one worth chasing. But I mean, in the end, if third stop cipher spawns, that survivor's going this way. This survivor is likely either going right here or right here. So while they might not spawn quite close to you, there's a good chance that they might move closer to you by the time that they decide to start trying to decode ciphers. Now, I don't even know why this survivor spawns over you. Spawns like on the other side of the map from you. And if you're like a mind's eye and you spawn 2-story and spawn group 7, you're pretty much set. I don't even know why that spawns a thing. In my opinion, that survivor should spawn 2-story, but it is what it is. Spawn group 7. This is obviously the one no spawn point. Stay away from that if at all possible. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums up all the spawn points. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that video. If there's a map that you want me to make my next video on in the future specifically, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.